The USB-C speed trap, the 480 megabits per second lie. You have a drawer full of USB-C cables. Congratulations. You also have a drawer full of USB 2.0 technology from the year 2000. You just do not know which cables are which, because they all look identical. Here is what is happening. USB-C is a connector shape. It tells you absolutely nothing about what is wired inside the cable. Most USB-C cables sold as basic charging cables are internally built to the USB 2.0 standard, which is a data specification from 2000 that maxes out at 480 megabits per second. To put that in real terms, transferring a 50 gigabyte file over one of those cables takes over 15 minutes. The same transfer over a proper USB 4 cable rated at 40 gigabits per second takes under a minute. Both cables look identical. Both fit into the same port. Only one of them is useful for anything beyond charging. So how do you tell the difference? The cable itself will not volunteer this information. What you are looking for is printed text or a logo on the cable body or packaging. A cable rated for super speed, meaning USB 3.2, will often carry a small super speed logo, a stylized SS symbol with a number next to it indicating 5, 10, or 20 gigabits per second. A USB 4 or Thunderbolt 4 cable rated for 40 gigabits per second will explicitly say so on the packaging. If the packaging says nothing about data speed and only mentions wattage for charging, you are almost certainly holding a USB 2.0 cable in a modern shell. The spec to look for is printed on the cable jacket in small text. If there is no such text, assume the worst and plan accordingly. The 240-watt eMarker chip secret. You bought a 100-watt USB-C charger specifically so your laptop would charge fast. You plugged it in using a cable from your desk drawer. Your laptop is charging at roughly 18 watts. The charger is not broken. Your cable is quietly rationing your power. And the reason is a chip you cannot see, did not know existed, and probably never thought to check for. That chip is called an eMarker, short for electronically marked cable assembly. It is a tiny integrated circuit embedded inside the connector housing of a USB-C cable, not in the cable itself, but in the plastic tip you hold. Its job is to announce to both the charger and the device what this cable is actually capable of carrying. When you plug in a USB-C cable that has an eMarker, the charger asks the cable what it can handle. The cable responds with its rated current, for example, 5 amps. The charger then delivers the full power the device needs, up to 100 watts. Without the chip, the cable cannot answer that question. The charger defaults to a safe limit of 3 amps, which caps power delivery at 60 watts, regardless of what the charger or device supports. This is not a bug, it is a protection mechanism. The problem is that the majority of USB-C cables sold without explicit power ratings do not have an eMarker, and the packaging rarely tells you this clearly. For power above 100 watts, which the USB Power Delivery 3.1 standard known as Extended Power Range introduced, the cable needs a second upgraded eMarker chip rated for 5 amps at up to 48 volts. A regular 100-watt eMarker cable will hard cap that delivery even if your charger and laptop both support 140 or 240 watts. The number to look for on packaging is either a 5 amp rating, a 100 watt rating, or for above 100 watts, an explicit 240 watt or extended power range label. If the cable only says what connector shapes are on each end, it does not have the chip. The HDMI 2.1 fakeout. You bought a cable with HDMI 2.1 printed on the box. You plugged your PlayStation 5 or Xbox Series X into your TV and tried to set it to 4K at 120 frames per second. The screen went black, flickered, or simply refused. The cable looks identical to a working one. The problem is in what that label actually means. Or more accurately, what it is allowed not to mean. Here is the mechanism. The HDMI Licensing Administrator, the body that governs HDMI standards, does not certify cables by version number at all. Official certification for cables capable of full HDMI 2.1 bandwidth uses the name Ultra High Speed HDMI, which supports up to 48 gigabits per second and is required for 4K at 120 frames per second, 8K output, and variable refresh rate. The label HDMI 2.1 on a cable box is technically a marketing term, not a certified specification. Manufacturers can apply it broadly, and many do. including on cables that are only wired to the older high-speed standard, which caps at 18 gigabits per second. That older standard does not have the bandwidth for 4K at 120 frames per second. The result is a cable that fits the port, passes a signal at lower settings, and then fails visibly the moment you push the connection harder. What you are looking for is the exact phrase ultra high speed HDMI on the cable itself or on the packaging, not HDMI 2.1 compatible, not supports 8K, not high performance. Those phrases are decoration. Ultra high speed certified cables also carry a scannable QR code label from an authorized testing center. If the box does not have that QR code and the ultra high speed wording in full, you are taking a gamble on a cable that may or may not have the bandwidth your console or GPU needs. The real ones cost more. The fake-looking ones cost the same. Buy by the label, not the number. The DisplayPort Pin 20 killer. Every section so far has been about cables that waste your time or quietly steal your power. This one is about a cable that can destroy your graphics card, and it looks completely normal. DisplayPort connectors have 20 pins. According to the VESA DisplayPort specification, VESA is the Video Electronics Standards Association, the body that defines the DisplayPort standard. Pin 20 is designated as DPPWR, a low-power line that exists to supply power to accessories like active cable adapters. In a standard cable connecting a graphics card to a monitor, that pin is not supposed to be wired through. It should be left unconnected. When it is connected, the 3.3-volt power rail from the monitor gets fed backward through the cable and into the graphics card's circuitry during a cold boot. Specifically, when the GPU is powered off, but the monitor is still on. The result is a voltage conflict that can cause repeated boot failures, black screens on startup, system freezes during post, and in confirmed cases, permanent damage to the graphics card. Dell's own support documentation explicitly explains that their DisplayPort cables have the 20th wire removed internally for this exact reason. Independent testing of off-brand DisplayPort cables found that a significant portion were incorrectly wired with pin 20 connected. Modern graphics cards produced after roughly 2017 received driver and firmware updates that provide partial protection against this issue. But older hardware has no such guard. The fix is simple and free. Buy DisplayPort cables from a certified brand and verify they follow the VESA spec. If you have a cheap cable from an unknown seller and your PC has ever had unexplained boot failures or black screens when the monitor was already on, the cable is a reasonable suspect. Replace it before diagnosing anything else. The Ethernet Cat scam. The braided Cat 8 cable on Amazon has gold-plated connectors, a thick woven jacket, and a price that seems surprisingly reasonable for something that sounds this impressive. It is almost certainly not a real Cat 8 cable, and even if it were, it would not change your internet speed by a single megabit. The category rating system for Ethernet cables, Cat 5e, Cat 6, Cat 6a, Cat 7, Cat 8, indicates the cable's tested bandwidth capacity and the maximum Ethernet speeds it can support. A genuine Cat 8 cable supports 25 to 40 gigabits per second and is engineered for very short-run rack-to-rack connections in data centers, not home use. The cheap cables labeled Cat 8 on consumer marketplaces are frequently constructed with copper-clad aluminum conductors instead of solid copper, substandard wire gauge, and no shielding that meets Cat 8 specifications. They are physically incapable of passing a real Cat 8 certification test. The thick jacket and braiding are cosmetic. The number on the label means nothing without independent certification from a body like UL or ETL. More importantly, even if you somehow had a genuine Cat 8 cable, your home router's Ethernet port almost certainly runs at 1 gigabit per second maximum, which a Cat 5e cable from 2003 can handle at full speed across 100 meters. The cable cannot make your port faster than its rated speed. The only Ethernet cable upgrade that would ever matter in a home setup is Cat 6a if you have, or plan to get a 2.5 or 10 gigabit network card and a switch that supports it. For everyone else, Cat 5e or Cat 6 is what you need, and what you probably already have is fine. The modular PSU cable bomb. Everything so far has cost you time, money, or a component. This section is where you potentially lose multiple components simultaneously. Hear a sound you never want to hear from inside a computer case, and learn that two cables can share the exact same plastic connector while being wired in completely different and incompatible ways. Modular power supplies, PSU stands for Power Supply Unit, allow you to connect only the cables you need, keeping unused ones out of the case. Every modular cable has two ends. One that plugs into the device being powered, hard drive, graphics card, motherboard, and one that plugs into the power supply itself. The device end follows a standardized pin layout. The power supply end does not. There is no universal standard for the PSU side pinout of modular cables. Corsair, EVGA, Seasonic, Be Quiet, and others all use different internal wiring configurations while sharing the same physical connector shape. A Corsair modular cable fits physically into an EVGA power supply's modular port. The pins make contact, the cable locks in. The voltages are completely scrambled on arrival. Where the EVGA supply expects a ground pin, it may be receiving 12 volts. Where a 5-volt line is expected, it may receive something else entirely. When you power on, the connected devices, hard drives, solid-state drives, optical drives, receive the wrong voltages instantaneously. In documented cases shared across forums and hardware communities, including a Tom's Hardware report from early 2026 about an enthusiast frying a 14 terabyte hard drive this exact way, the result is immediate component death, smoke, burned circuit boards, and data loss. The rule is absolute. Only ever use the modular cables that came with your specific power supply. If you lose them, contact the manufacturer for replacements matched to your exact model. A braided cable kit from a third party is not worth the hardware it will destroy the first time the pinouts do not match. Every cable covered here looked normal. That is the entire problem. If you enjoyed finding out what is hiding inside ordinary hardware, there is a full video on the hidden features built into USB ports that almost nobody knows exist. That video is on screen right now. Go watch it next.